In today's video, I want to talk about bodybuilding and Pectus Excavatum. Whether you should do it, if you can win a bodybuilding show, how you should do it, because there's nuances that relate to bodybuilding with Pectus that need to be considered. So firstly, should you do it? Yes, I think everyone with Pectus Excavatum should partake in bodybuilding to some extent, because the degree of which when you're bodybuilding and building muscle can help make your condition look less noticeable is tremendous. I mean, just look at my result, look at my client results. They're proof in the pudding. 90% of my client results are just through like weight training and building muscle as well as posture. Does depend on the severity to an extent, because if you have an extremely severe case of pectus, you also could potentially have Marfan syndrome, and with Marfan syndrome, high intensity strenuous exercise is not recommended due to health concerns, so it is always good to get it checked out. But writing off that scenario, then yes, I definitely think you should be partaking in strenuous weight training to build muscle, which is, I guess, bodybuilding. But it's not your traditional bodybuilding when it comes to pectus, because there is nuances that relate to the condition that need to be considered. Firstly, one thing that is a huge nuance when it comes to pectus is posture. Okay, now if you look at the stereotypical bodybuilder who's trained ineffectively, what you'll notice is a lot of them are like this and they're all hunched over. And so what that actually does with the pectus condition is it makes it look worse. Okay, and the reason that they're like this, the stereotypical bodybuilder, is because bodybuilders love to train chest and they don't do enough back. Okay, that's a big mistake you can make with pectus, and it's something you really need to consider. So the way I like to look about bodybuilding with Pectus Excavatum is it's more functional bodybuilding. So we're training in a way that's going to relate better to posture. We're training our abs and our obliques more that are going to relate more to the rib flare, because we also have flaring ribs, which most people don't have either. And so we're training in a way that's specific to our case and is more functional, okay? Like I implement movements like overhead squats and things for my clients to work on their thoracic mobility and improve different movement patterns, okay? My training is not just bodybuilding, it transcends bodybuilding. And if you look at just that traditional just bodybuilding style approach, it's not going to be ideal for pectus. So yes, we definitely should be doing bodybuilding in terms of building your body and building your muscles, but not just the normal status quo of training. Okay, it will help training like that way, but there are other things we can do to make a result way better and to ensure things like posture are also getting addressed, because they often get overlooked. The main thing that most of us are worried about with pectus is our looks and how it affects our looks, but it does also transcend often into a reduced stamina and reduced exercise tolerance, reduced cardiovascular fitness. And so that's something that I also program for my clients just for overall health and well-being that I think is important to consider when it comes to pectus. And so for my clients, you know, typical bodybuilding involves like virtually no cardio, and that's something that I definitely actually program for my clients, and I think it's important. On top of that, I actually don't think getting like super massive for Pectus Excavatum actually really helps. I think you just want a nice lean muscular physique. You don't want to be huge, in my opinion. I think just a nice lean muscular physique is going to be optimal for masking the condition, because if you get overly big, then it can sometimes make the indent almost appear more noticeable again. You just want that like nice middle ground. Obviously, if you're super skinny, it's very noticeable, but then if you're like unnaturally massive, I also don't think that's too great. I want to show you guys some examples of some bodybuilders with pectus and how they've been able to make their condition look better. So if we look at someone like Steve Rees, who's like an old school era bodybuilder, he's super famous back in the day. I mean, his physique looks awesome, but he rocks it, you know, and that's one cool thing about you see like bodybuilders with pectus is they're rocking it and they're confident in their bodies, and it doesn't seem to be getting them down, which ultimately I'm sure is what you want to achieve, right? And so building that muscular frame can really help, and it helps mask it, helps build that confidence. So it really is a key thing. Now, a more severe scenario is Steve Pfizer. His pectus is still very noticeable, because he has a severe case. And that's the other thing with bodybuilding to mask pectus, guys. Like the milder your case is, the more muscle building helps mask it. But even a severe case, it helps tremendously. It's just not going to make it unnoticeable, but it will make it less noticeable. So for Steve Pfizer, like if he didn't build weights, his pectus would be like super noticeable, like something like this image. Okay, but now that he's actually built muscle, it's still noticeable, but way less noticeable. And like you're not just purely looking at his deformity, but rather like his impressive physique. So it really does help. Like just these examples are key to show how much, you look at his pec development, how much that actually can help mask the pectus. Now, Steve Pfizer is kind of on the limit of how big I'd recommend you were to get if you wanted to mask your pectus. He's kind of maybe pushed it a little bit too far. I think just being that little bit more of a natural lean muscular build looks better. Then if I show you guys my example, so I've actually entered a bodybuilding show and I actually won my show, which was really cool confidence boost for me to know that you can like win a bodybuilding show with Pectus Excavatum, especially, you know, for me personally, obviously knowing my struggles with it and how self-conscious I was as a kid and wouldn't take off my shirt, and then to transcend that into actually going into a bodybuilding show and then actually having judges win the show for me was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool experience. If you look at my before and after and you look at the physique I was able to develop, it's really that lean, muscular, like men's physique style bodybuilding, not like classic bodybuilding or the traditional bodybuilding categories, but more of a men's physique style show. It's kind of the build that makes your pectus look the best. And so I entered a men's physique show, not classic bodybuilding, okay? And so it's in this men's physique style category of bodybuilding where it's all about just lean muscle, and I think that's really key. Now, another thing to note when it comes to exercising and bodybuilding to mask pectus is the physiques you see on a bodybuilding stage are not sustainable for a long term, okay? And the thing with this is obviously we want this to be sustainable. We want the physique that you develop to be something that is a long-term thing, because obviously if you just get this physique and then you don't maintain it, your pectus is going to be noticeable again. So ideally, with training for Pectus Excavatum, it's more of a functional training approach that is a sustainable lifestyle approach. And that's what I try and teach my clients and empower my clients with. I try and get them a crazy transformation, and I try and educate them so they know how to maintain that on their own. And to maintain the result is a lot easier than to develop the result. So the level of discipline required to maintain is a lot less. And so the physique that I had on that show is certainly not the physique I have now. Like, I'm not as lean as I was then, but I actually almost prefer my physique now, and it's a lot more sustainable for me, and I don't have to be as rigorously disciplined with my diet, and I feel great, I have energy. Those guys on the bodybuilding show also, they feel horrible, they're really depleted. So you want to be more of a fueled physique. So, I was probably 7%, 8% body fat on that show and very depleted. I was 180 pounds, like 80 kilos. Now I'm 90 kilos, 200 pounds. I'm probably 10, 11, 12% body fat. But the other thing that I've done since then, and this is another important nuance to note, is I train my core and my obliques heaps, and I do a lot of compound movements and functional training. And so as a result, I've gotten like a thicker, blockier core. Now, this doesn't transcend too well into a physique show in terms of the V-taper, but what it does transcend well into is masking the rib flare more, because you've really just developed like a thicker abdomen to hide the already kind of flaring ribs you have. And then on top of that, having thicker, more developed abs is, at this higher body fat percentage level, they actually show all the time. Okay, and so that's really key as well. When your abs are more developed, they're going to show at a higher body fat level. And obviously we want the abs to be showing to mask the rib flare. So, and the sunken chest as well. Developing like your upper abs really helps mask the sunken chest too. So there's some nuances to note when it comes to bodybuilding for pectus. If you're interested in like doing a bodybuilding show, I think you certainly should do it. I think it's a great learning experience, and it's going to obviously set you up with building a great amount of muscle, which is going to help. But just make sure you don't neglect posture. Make sure you train in a way to focus on pectus. You train your abs and your obliques a lot. And then make sure that you don't set yourself up with unhealthy, unsustainable habits in terms of your diet and your training that then will result in you end up having like a bad physique or hurting your hormones or hating the love for training, because ideally this becomes more of a lifestyle approach. If any of you would like help with your training, when you want to overcome your pectus, like obviously, my training works. I've got thousands of client testimonials now. I'm sure you've seen it if you've watched me for a while. So, I'd recommend you just book a call with me at fixpectus.com. Then I can meet you, determine the right approach, and we can get started working together as me being your coach.